sorry, laser pointer. So today we're going to talk about writing a concept paper. So a concept paper is part of of the different or various academic papers that we learned about we're learning about this semester, and it's the last of the academic papers that we're going to learn about. So a concept paper seems a little bit intimidating in because of its name, but hopefully during this lesson we'll be understanding more and learning a lot more about the definitions and what a concept paper entails. Okay, so there we go. So first we have, of course, the objectives of our lesson, much like every other lesson we have. So the first objective is, of course, we have to define and describe what a concept paper is. Next is identify the purpose, the structure, and the guidelines of writing a concept paper. And the third, we have determine ways of elucidating a concept, or when we say elucidating, this is expanding upon or clarifying and or explaining a certain concept. Next is, of course, we're going to try and construct our own concept papers. Now, with those objectives in mind, let's go on to our lesson. So, before we at the start of this lesson, I'd like to give you this quote. It says it's from Jocelyn Cagley, saying that to make great ideas a reality, it must we must act, experiment, fail, adapt, and learn on a daily basis. Great ideas are not uh, called great uh, if they are just ideas. Okay, so in later on in the lesson you will learn how to apply these great ideas and to make such great ideas a reality. There. Okay, so a concept paper. Now, the definition of a concept paper is that it refers to an academic or research paper that is written with the primary purpose of identifying and explaining an idea or concept related to a particular scholarly field or discipline, therefore conducting a research. So, a concept paper. It is a shorter type of research paper. It is still under the academic. It is still under the academic writing, wherein we are identifying and explaining an idea or concept. So this is usually used here in school. Particularly, we use the concept paper as um, it's sort of the first three chapters of a certain research. Okay, so this is when we have the introduction, the rationale, we have different parts of the concept paper wherein we are going to identify and explain a certain concept or idea that is worth researching. Please take note of that, worth researching. There are a lot, of course, in everyday life, we have a lot of ideas, and not to downplay, but a lot of researches, or in my years of both being a panel and teaching research, it's always been a struggle to find the concepts that are worth researching. So before we go on to writing a full-on research paper, we first try to create a concept paper about that topic or about that idea. Okay? Concept papers are summaries of projects or issues. So as I said, it is a shorter version of a research paper. That's why it's called a summary, meaning that we only get some of the most important parts or the most pertinent parts to explain said concept. Okay? Now, there is also a term called the proposal. The proposal and the concept paper in this, for the context of this lesson, are one and the same. So they are unanimous and they serve the same function. Now, for the purposes of this lesson, we'll be focusing more on the project side of of creating a concept paper, meaning that we'll be focusing more on how to create a proposal that will help you get a project or a certain action plan approved. So because of course, sometimes we do have some community problems, some societal problems that we would like to research and resolve. Okay, so those are some of the first three descriptors of a concept paper. The next descriptor is that a concept paper may also be written to provide an overview of the project by summarizing what it's about, its importance, and how you intend to carry it out. So when we say it's an overview, it's uh, for universality's sake, it's like a trailer to a movie. Okay? So when we have a concept paper and someone is reading that paper, there is a certain they get a certain idea of what the project is, what's going to happen, ano yung mga gagawin nyo para ma-solve yung problem, and of course, it also explains the problem itself. Okay? So, the problem or the issue itself. It can, and of course, the concept paper it's just not used by students, it can be used by entrepreneurs, non-government organizations, of course, government employees, people who would like to have a certain project or certain program approved. Okay? Especially if they want to get certain amount of funding for that project. Okay, so those are the definitions and descriptions of a concept paper. Now, what are the purpose, structure, and guidelines of writing a concept paper? Of course, we need to know why we are writing a concept paper. What is the main purpose? So, if we write a concept paper, what is the main goal of that concept paper? Ano yung gusto nating ma-achieve kapag sinusulat natin yung concept paper na yon? Okay? Here are the purposes of a concept paper. We have four distinct purposes. The first serves as foundation of the full proposal. So, the concept paper is essentially what the full proposal will be anchored on. Ibig sabihin po, ito po yung magiging basehan ng full proposal ninyo. So dito kasi sa concept paper, since dito natin ini-explain yung issue or yung problem or yung concept, of course, this will be kumbaga, this will be the base of the knowledge of the proposal. Okay? Kumbaga, everything that's in the concept paper will help you further convince whoever is reading the proposal. Next is the second purpose is to help determine whether a certain project is feasible or not. Okay, this is something that I've encountered many times as a research teacher, especially last year when we were having our defense. We had our proposal defense for the research topics. And what happened was that we saw that, yes, the titles were good and the researchers were determined, but we saw that sometimes certain projects or certain research topics are not feasible or not attainable. Maybe because of timeline or issues with group works or issues with the respondents. So what we so we were also enlightened by reading the concept papers. Parang doon namin na-realize na, ay, hindi pala to kayang gawin within this span of time or hindi pala to attainable because certain respondents are too scarce or wala talaga tayong makukuwang reliable respondents. And it's okay. Parang that's part of research kasi na sa proposal part mo na parang nangangalahati na kayo, dun nyo palang maaano yung feasibility ng inyong research or ng inyong project. Okay? So, next, it used to pique or the interest of the potential funding agencies. When we say piquing interest, this is when we try to convince, okay? We try to give them reason to fund our project. Because again, most proposals, most concept papers, they are used either to fund projects, programs, or researches themselves. I remember I remember having a friend. I do have a friend who who created an entire concept paper for his research because he wanted to gain funding from the government for this certain scientific research. And there are branches of the government who do that. For example, DOH. Before the time of the pandemic, DOH, DOST, sometimes BFAD. They even give people the chance to apply for grants and loans to finance their projects and uh, their researches. So to do that, we need to have a solid concept paper. We need to have a well explained, well clarified paper to make sure that we convince the funding agencies. Next, we have to obtain informal feedback on the ideas prior to preparing for the full proposal. So here, the fourth purpose, this is when we say informal feedback, this is when someone will the closest real life example of this is a defense. Okay? So, when kumbaga ano niya, magbibigay yung panel ng feedback, how they can improve, how they can, whether or not this is an acceptable project or proposal to have. And when this happens, okay, when the feedback happens, you get to know what you can improve on when it comes to writing the full or the final draft of your proposal or your concept paper, or even in the final research stages. Okay? So, this is just a tip, especially since you're moving on to research next semester. Always listen to your panel. Always take down notes. Always make sure to remember or record their feedback to you when you are presenting your research proposals or your research or your concept papers, because this is how you will learn how to improve the paper itself. Okay? So those are the purposes of a concept paper. Remember, these purposes, much like the position paper, it's not always 100% met. So, di ba sa position paper, we had three main purposes. It's okay that even though we don't meet one of them, at least we meet just one. Kahit hindi natin ma-meet lahat. Okay? When it comes to these purposes. So, ayan. So, we have a structure of a position paper. These are the parts, of a concept paper. These are the parts of a concept paper. These are what needs to be um, in the content of the position paper. A lot of schools have different formats, but this is the format that we use for EAPP. Now, when you move on to your research subject, you'll have a different. The research teachers, I believe, they have a different format, but that's okay. These are just preliminary things that you need to prepare as a writer of a concept paper. Okay, so number one, we have the introduction. Okay, the first part, the introduction, of course, you give the name and the title of the concept. Of course, kailangan meron tayong ano, kailangan merong pangalan yung ipopropose natin. Kailangan merong title yung paper natin. It's not going to be as easy as it's not going to be as easy as just ito po yung concept. Ganun, di ba? Kailangan pangalanan natin. And sometimes, it helps if it's catchy or it has an interesting name. I remember when I was going to PUP, when I was starting out my master's, a student went a little bit, kasi may, of course, we followed a lot of PUP groups, we followed a lot of, not exactly like social media accounts from PUP. And this one student, he she she went semi-viral around PUP because the title of her paper was Pinagtagpo pero di tinadhana. Parang the underlying reason why many couples break up after a long-term relationship. So parang that's something catchy, something that's a title that's catchy, interesting, and that in that time parang usong-uso pa yung mga ganong hugot. So that was something that we sort of took notice of. And even the panel themselves, they were reported to be very amused with said title. So kung makakaisip kayo ng catchy or funny or interesting name for your project or concept, it will be beneficial for you. But of course, make it appropriate. Siyempre, alangan naman lagyan nyo yan ng mga curse words or ng mga kung ano-ano dyan. Okay? So, of course, since we have an introduction, we need to introduce the concept briefly. So, when we say briefly, this is just a short explanation or a short introduction to what the problem is. And yes, thank you for clarifying that, Faith. It is okay to have Tagalog titles given that they are appropriate to the theme or to the topic of your research. Now, if kasi again, hindi kasi ako yung next sem, hindi ako yung teacher nyo ng research. So, hindi ko alam kung papayagan kayo. But if you can justify the title well enough, I think you'll be allowed to do so. Okay? Pero syempre, kahit Tagalog yung title, kailangan English yung content. Baka mamaya, ay, Tagalog naman yung title natin. Tagalog na lang tayo ano. So, it depends really on, of course, the panel, your research advisor, the panel, or the teacher who is requiring you to write the concept paper. Okay? So, I hope that clarifies it, Nak. So, back to our explanation. So, when we come to the introduction, of course, there's a brief or a short introduction to the project or what the research is all about. Okay? Essentially, you're answering the question, what is this paper about or what is this topic about? When we have these ay, bakit ganun? Okay. Ayan. May sorry, my scrolling wheel on my mouse is broken, so it has a mind of its own now. So ayan. So when we are introducing our topic, make sure that although it is brief, it is clear to the reader. Okay? Paigsi lang pero klaro. Okay? Remember when our topic on language use, we don't need to be very wordy, but it still needs to be clear, and it needs to be understandable for our readers or our audience. Okay? Next, statement of purpose. This is when we have the second part. This is the second part of the second part of the structure of a concept paper, which is the purpose, the need, or rationale. Okay, hindi po rationale, rationale. Okay? May maarte po, rationale. So, here, this is when we state our purpose in one sentence. Okay? One sentence. Write what your purpose is. Okay? For example, the purpose of this project is to help to help the children of Barangay 101 Quezon City. Ganon. So, I don't know if there really is a Barangay 101. That's just an example. So, that's your main purpose. Okay? Iba po ang purpose sa objectives. Okay? Ang objectives, these are the specific objectives that okay. So, the general purpose is to help. Ano yung specific thing na gagawin nyo para makatulong? Okay? Pwedeng number 1 kasi bulleted to or numbered. So, the number 1 objective to feed or to provide feeding sessions or feeding program every 3 weeks to the children of Barangay 101. Number 2, to provide health seminar to the parents of Barangay 101. Another thing that we can to distribute health kits and COVID safety kits to the families of Barangay 101. So that ganito ganyan. So tandaan, The statement of purpose is the general purpose. Okay? That's the broad aspect of what you want to do for the community, or what you want to do to help solve a certain community problem or issue, or to help research a certain topic. So, in terms of research, this can be to determine the common causes of stress in grade 11 students. Okay? So, that's the main purpose. The objectives are the specific objectives, the specific things you want to do with this concept. So, if our statement of purpose, the general purpose is to determine the common causes of stress, our objectives can be, for example, to quantify the most common cause of stress, to quantify the least common cause of stress, to determine the most the cause of stress that has the most impact. Okay? Kasi iba yung commonality sa impact eh. Pwede dagdagan natin ng pangatlo to determine na pang-apat, to determine the cause of stress that has the least impact. Okay? So, pwede nating malaman dyan. For example, most common cause of stress is what? Schoolworks. Pero, pag nakita natin, ang pinaka-stressful, ang pinaka-may impact ay parents and family pressure pala. 'Di ba? So there are a lot of things that we can do in the objectives. We can write very specific objectives to fit our purpose. Okay? So tandaan, sa sa statement of purpose, okay? Sa statement of purpose, that is what you are going to do in a broad and general sense. Okay? It's one sentence, and it's only one sentence, okay? Next is the objectives. Sa objectives naman, ito yung bulleted, numbered, and it can be 3 or more statements that are specifically what you're going to do to achieve your purpose. Okay? Ganun po. Number 3. So, sa number 3, this is our project description. Okay? The project description is where, behold, di ba? Parang surprise, surprise. This is where we describe the project. Ayan. So, the first thing we have to do is for the project description, is to write at least 3 questions. Not too narrow, not too broad. That your idea, if carried out, will answer. Okay? So, for example, ito kumbaga, sa full-on research, these are the research questions. Okay? Sometimes, and this is a very common way of writing the questions in a project description, we just rephrase the objectives into question format. Okay? So, for example, if our question objectives are to determine the most common causes of stress, to determine the least common causes of stress, and to determine the most impactful cause of stress. So, yung tatlong yon, i-rephrase lang natin as question. What are the common causes of stress? What are the least common causes of stress? What cause of stress has the most impact to the respondents? Diba? Ganun lang siya. Minsan, ganun lang yun kadali. Now, with those notes to be kept in mind, remember that when you're writing the objectives, you have to, at one point, phrase them into questions. So, don't be, parang, yun nga, wag masyadong broad at wag masyadong narrow. Okay? Kung wag masyadong specific at wag masyadong general. Kung ano lang yung alam nyo na kayang sagutin ng research ninyo. Okay? Kasi minsan, dyan tayo, another, of course, tip for your research next sem in the coming years, minsan, nalalaglag tayo sa questions, sa research questions, because we're not asking the right type of questions. Okay? So, make sure that we phrase the questions in the right way. Okay? And hindi ko kayo magbibigyan ng specific example niyan kasi nga, I've encountered so many, some of them, isa. I had to panel for ABM. And for the most part, their concept paper was okay, attainable, everything. But the research questions were a little off. Kasi nga, parang gusto ang gusto yata nilang malaman is yung frequency or yung frequency of customer care. Parang hindi, yung customer satisfaction ng isang business. And yes, it's okay to ask that, but ang nangyari is yung research question nila walang kinalaman sa customer satisfaction. Parang hindi nila sinunod yung objectives nila. So, as much as possible, when you have these questions like this, align them with your objectives. Okay? Next, stakeholders or beneficiaries. Who will be involved in the process and who will benefit from it later on. Okay? So this is where we just give descriptions and a list of people generally, kahit walang specific na pangalan, hindi yung si Juan de la Cruz magbe-benefit po siya. Okay? But you just say who will benefit from either reading this or participating in this project or this program. Okay? Uh, for example, the parents, the residents of Barangay 101, the researchers themselves, the program heads themselves will benefit from this program. Okay? And then, of course, magbigay kayo ng konting explanation. A short explanation as to how they will benefit and how and why they will benefit from this. Kasi hindi pwedeng magbigay lang kayo ng listahan. So for example, you will say the residents of Barangay 101 will greatly benefit from this health outreach because they will gain important knowledge from the health seminars. They will receive several items that will help them be ready and help them avoid the dangers of the pandemic, ganyan-ganyan. Okay? So, magbibigay kayo talaga ng reason. So, ang rule ko dito noon, nung research teacher pa ako, one beneficiary, one sentence. Para talagang explain na explain. Wag yung the researchers will benefit from this. Oo, one sentence nga yun. Pero bigyan nyo ng explanation how and why you will benefit. The next part is a short description. Write a description of your concept that can be written. This can be written in several paragraphs, but commonly it is only 3 to 5 paragraphs long. Diba? Short description na yon. Now, when we say short description, eto na. Dito nyo na i-explain ang mga bagay-bagay. Okay? So, for example, this is where you're going to answer all of the whys. Okay? All of the whys, the who, the where, the what, all of the WH questions. Okay? Because this is when you explain. Dito na talaga kayo mag-explain ng concept ninyo, kung ano yung meron, kung bakit. Minsan dito rin ini-explain kung bakit yung program na yon yung magsosolve sa problem na to. So, ang lagi kong ini-explain dyan sa mga estudyante ko, you answered the who, the what, the where, the when, and most importantly, the why. Okay? Why is there a problem? Why do you need to research? 'Di ba? Bakit may problema? Bakit kailangan i-research? Bakit kailangan kayo or bakit kayo yung makakapag-solve ng problem? Bakit project nyo yung kailangan i-approve? Bakit umalis ng walang sabi? Bakit hindi lumaban kahit konti? Ay, yun. Sige, wale. Lyrics na pala yon. Okay, so, yon. Answer all of those are just some of the questions you can answer in this description to make sure that the reader is properly educated on the concept, on the project itself or the research itself. Okay? Again, 3 to 5 paragraphs. Kayo na po ang bahala kung gaano kahaba ang each paragraph, but most importantly, okay, we're not looking for length. Again, we're looking for clarity. Okay? So in those 3 to 5 paragraphs, make sure that you are clearly explaining what is going on with your concept, your project, or your research idea. Okay? So, the last part, meron pa pala. The last part of part 3, is methodology. What process are you going to follow? Okay? This answers the question how. How are you going to be able to attain your objectives, and how are you going to be able to answer the questions that you wrote before? Okay? Kung kung nag-aano tayo, kung tayo ay nagre-research, this is when you're going to describe, kumbaga sa survey report last time, 'di ba? This is the part where you explained what? The the survey the survey procedure, kumbaga. Okay? So, eto yung ano natin, what process are you going to follow to carry out the concept into a complete reality? Some people like to do this in a table format. Some people like to do this in a step-by-step chart. Okay? And some people like to write this in a paragraph form. Okay? So, it's mostly up to the writer how they will show this and how they will explain this in their own words. Okay? But, again, dito sa school, we usually use the paragraph form of the methodology. Okay? Again, this is where we explain and answer the question, how are you going to do it? How are you going to answer the questions? How are you going to achieve your objectives? Okay? Next, timetable. So, dito, we can use a graph. Okay? Pwede po tayong gumamit ng graphic organizers, timeline. This can show table. This can show the dates and tasks and things that are expected to be done. And of course, when they are expected to be done. So for example, if you're going to, yun nga, magpapa-health seminar kayo sa Barangay 101. Syempre, may mga ano yon, may bago pa yung seminar itself, may planning, bibili kayo ng materials, magse-survey kayo, mag-ocular kayo. When we say ocular, that's when you go to the environment itself, titignan nyo kung saan pwedeng magpa-seminar doon. Okay? The timetable is usually used if your concept paper has what? Has action. If your concept paper is more focused on the project or on a certain program. Okay? So, yan po. Yan. Next, we have the last part of the structure of a concept paper, or the last part of a concept paper, which is the support or budget. A support or budget is the outline of budget categories for requested project support. So kung humihingi kayo ng pera or humihingi kayo ng certain grant, that is what we call something when you ask for certain amount of money for when you ask for a certain amount of money from a certain funding agency, that's called a grant. So, ganito po. Okay? Excuse me. We have different budget categories. When you say budget categories, for example, yun nga, sa health seminar, syempre babayaran nyo doon sound system, logistics, committees, food, miscellaneous, transportation. So, it's up to you as the researcher or as the writer of the concept paper kung ilan yung budget categories na yon. But later on, we'll talk about how to create a realistic budget. Okay? Or what are the things we should consider when writing a budget. And the last, we have the conclusion. We write a short paragraph or 1 to 2 which are 1 to 3 sentences long that can conclude our concept paper. Your conclusion should emphasize the purpose and the importance or the significance of your big idea in the paper. So this is essentially like every other conclusion that we do, we have something that makes a lasting impression on the reader of the concept paper to make sure that they get the significance. Alam nila na importante talaga na ma-research, magawa, at or ma-implement nyo yung project or program ninyo. Okay? So that's the last part of a concept paper. Now, ito. So we have a few guidelines on writing a concept paper. First, of course, cost and methodology should be reasonable. Okay? When we say reasonable, of course, within reason and reality. Okay? Baka mamaya magpapa-health seminar kayo, ang hiningi nyo 1 billion pesos. Saan nyo dadalhin yung 1 billion pesos? No? Sino ba ang mag-i-speak sa health seminar na yan? Si Elon Musk ba? Okay? So, as much as possible, be what? Be realistic and be reasonable when you are writing the cost and methodology. Another thing with methodology, something I'd like to mention, reasonable methodology, meaning that it is really something that you can do. Okay? It's really something that you can implement. That's what I was saying before. Sometimes when we are paneling or when we are helping researchers with their concept papers, the grade 12 researchers, sometimes it's hard for us to approve certain concept papers because their methodologies are not grounded in reason. Minsan tinatanong namin sila, paano nyo makukuha yung data na kailangan nyo? Mag-i-interview po kami. Quantitative yung study nila. So, pag quantitative mga anak, yes, pwede kayo mag-interview, but but that's not your main data gathering. When you have quantitative research, you're always going to have what? Quantitative research gathering methods, meaning either you're going to experiment or most likely you're going to have a survey. Okay? Kasi doon natin, ang survey, mas quantifiable siya kesa sa interview. Okay? So, minsan ganon ang nangyayari. Hindi nag-a-align yung methodology sa mga nais nilang gawin. Hindi reasonable. Okay? Ganon po. Next, budget. Methodology and timeline should be clearly mentioned. Okay? Clearly mentioned. This is what I like about it's not that I don't like any other kind of student, but ABM students, because they have been taking, because they have took up, by the time we write the concept paper, nakakuha na sila ng accounting 1, yung nakakapag-columnar, nakakapag-balancing na sila. Kapag pinagawa sila ng budget, detailed, hanggang sa huling sentavo, kuwang-kuha nila yung budget nila. It's so clearly stated na kapag nagche-check ako ng budget ng ABM students, and I hope that, stereotypically, yes, ABM students. Pero yon, ang clear, or down to the right centavo, kahit sabihin mo na hypothetical budget lang siya, kahit sabihin mo na, kahit kailan hindi to mababasa ng funding agency, ako mismo gusto ko silang bigyan ng pera eh. Kasi alam mo kung saan mapupunta lahat. Ganun po dapat. Okay? Mula sa budget methodology timeline, dapat lahat clear. Okay? Alam ng funding agent, alam ng reader na, okay, February 12 pala, ganito na dapat yung ginagawa nila at kailangan nila ng ganito karaming pera. Okay? Ganun po. Next, use statistics and figures when discussing the rationale of the project. Okay? In the rationale, we can use statistics and figures to just back up our we can also use this in the project description. Okay? So, we can use statistics and figures to just back up the reasoning behind our concept paper. Okay? Again, evidence is very important. Next, limit it only to 5 pages or less. Okay? Do not overwhelm the readers with unnecessary details. Again, hindi po length ang tinitingnan natin. Clarity and the effectiveness of your explanations. Okay? So, meron kasi minsan title page. It depends on the institution or the people who want to use who are going to read the concept paper. Kung meron silang title page or kung ano yung format na ibibigay sa inyo. Next, never request funding for planning the proposal. Hindi pa po kayo, kumbaga, hindi nyo pa kailangan humingi ng funding or ng budget kung magpaplano pa lang kayo. Dapat, pag hingi nyo ng budget or pag hingi nyo ng funding or ng support, ready na, may plano na. Okay? Parang yan pag humingi ka yung dad ko kasi ganyan. So, papengin naman ako ng 1,000 eh. 1,000? Anong gagawin mo sa 1,000? Hindi ko pa nga alam kung ano eh. Basta may bibilin ako. Pag ganun, hindi ako bibigyan ng tatay ko. Kasi pag humingi lang ako ng pera ng walang reason. Siyempre, ganun din yung iba. Hindi yung iba. Ganun din ang most of our funding agencies. Ganun din yung mga authorities like that. They won't give you money if you do not justify where the money is going to go. Okay? Kung wala pang plano. Okay? Next, refrain from using jargon. Ayan. So kung meron kayong specific field like yan, ayan STEM, wag muna kayong gumamit ng jargon when your targeted audience are not professional or experts in certain ano. So hindi naman lahat alam yung mga jargon. So para clear, again, for clarity and to make sure that everyone is on the same page and they understand everything, wag po tayong gumamit ng jargon for our proposal. Next, include the overview of the budget if it is required, or you may simply include the type of support or you require or need. Minsan, hindi nyo kailangan ng budget. For example, if the concept paper is purely a research project, okay? So you may say that you don't really need money, but you do need internet connection. Okay? So pwedeng mag-provide ang agency or ang funding body ng internet connection sa inyo, tapos sila na lang magbabayad. Or you need certain access to books or publications. So etong si funding agency magbibigay sa inyo ng access or kukunan kayo ng access to those books and resources. Sa PUP, ganun po minsan if you're asking for support at hindi pera ang kailangan, you are granted permission to access certain books, records, or anything na kakailanganin nyo para sa research ninyo. Okay? So tandaan, when we say support, it's not always about money. It's not always about budget. Sometimes we need to write about what we need specifically, like equipment. Okay? Hindi ka nga humihingi ng pera, pero humihingi ka ng laptop. Okay? Pero hindi yun pera, so hindi yun kasama sa funding. Equipment po yun. So that's something that you can consider. Next, okay, number 8. Be sure that the basic format details are incorporated, such as page number. Of course, for clarity rin. Something nangyayari rin sa amin sa defense, minsan sasabihin ni nung face-to-face pa, sasabihin ni researcher, if you look at page 3, naksan dito yung page 3. Oh, ma'am, if you look at, sige, madali pa page 3. Ma'am, if you look at page 24, saglit lang ha, magbibilang lang ako 1, 2, 3, 4. Kasi wala silang page number. Okay? Page number, part titles, don't forget those. Okay? When you are writing your concept paper. It's important also. Kasi, ayun, yun nga, pag nagde-defense, or just simply, si reader mismo, kung meron kayong table of contents, tapos hindi tugma yung table of contents sa page number, ang laking inconvenience yun sa reader ninyo. So, for convenience and for clarity's sake, make sure that you don't forget all of the basic format details. And last, cite your references. Always cite your references. When we say cite your references, always use APA citation 7th edition, of course. Okay? For the school, that's what we use. Some people use MLA, some people use Chicago, but here in UNIDA Christian colleges, we use APA citation. Okay? So those are the guidelines of writing a concept paper. So, before writing a concept paper, you have to learn how to explain. Okay? So, bago tayo magbara-bara ng sulat, kailangan marunong muna tayo mag-explain ng concept natin. Okay? So, there are ways of elucidating a concept. When we say elucidating, this is clarifying, explaining, expanding, expounding upon a certain concept. Okay? So, what are the 3 ways of elucidating? The first is by definition. We elucidate by definition by identifying a term and making its meaning clearer. Okay? So, from the word definition, nagde-define tayo. Ina-identify natin. So, when we are defining something, of course, we aim to make it clear. Baka mamaya nag-explain kayo or nag-define kayo, mas nalito pa si reader. So, make sure that when we are using definition, we are either using the layman's terms. When we say layman's terms, ito yung simpler terms to be used. Okay? When I was a little bit younger, young pa rin ako. I used to use Cambridge Dictionary. Kasi alam ko, minsan may mga terms na pag hindi natin na-gets, ginugoogle natin, di ba? Pero, yung Google kasi, medyo advanced pa yung ano nila, yung terms na ginagamit nila sa loob ng definition. Ang Cambridge Dictionary, it's very good for definitions or for getting definitions because it uses simple words, easy to understand words for the definition. So, ganun po dapat yung definition natin. Easy to understand using simple words. Okay? Next, explication. Explication is a method of explanation in which sentences, verses, quotes, or passages are taken away from a literary or academic work and then interpreted and explained in a detailed way. Ang explication is a lot more complex than definition, but it also has sometimes it's most effective, especially if the reader really wants to have a detailed explanations of what is happening in the concept itself. I remember having to write a concept paper of my own so I could be admitted to my masters. So I used explication. So I took passages from a certain novel. I believe I used Dracula. I took passages from Dracula and I explained them and I analyzed them and interpreted them in detail. So essentially inexplain ko kung bakit nakakatakot yung novel na Dracula in the time that it was written. Because now if you read Dracula, because you know that Dracula is a vampire, hindi ka na matatakot eh. But since Dracula was written at a time na hindi pa uso yung mga slow burn, yung mga plot twist, ganon. It was very how you say, it was very innovative for its time, for what it was. Yun. So that's explication. Again, explication is a little bit more complicated and complex than definition, but it does have a very good results in a way of clarifying your or clarifying in a way of explaining your concept. And last, we have clarification. Entails the analysis of a concept by looking at the examples. So sometimes the concept of invertebrates is somewhat complicated. Kunwari, yung concept natin is invertebrates. So, to help clarify, we'll give examples. An invertebrate is defined as an organism that has no backbone. For example, we have worms, ants, ganyan. So, pag nakita ni reader yung examples na yun, meron na silang idea kung ano talaga yung, na-clarify na sa kanila, ano yung invertebrate. Okay? So, those are the 3 ways of elucidating on a topic. This can be done in combination. One paragraph can be definition, the other can be explication, the other can be clarification. This can be done exclusively. Gusto nyo puro definition lang, go. Gusto nyo puro explication lang, go lang rin. There are no limits. Okay? Kung gusto nyo definition at clarification, go lang rin. There is no unless you are told to do so by a governing body, much like a teacher or a research advisor, it is up to you as the writer how you're going to elucidate on a certain topic. Next, when we are doing definition, we have 3 types. The formal, this is when we give the genus and the differentia. We'll talk about that later. And the informal, when we give applied a specific context, synonym or antonym. This is usually what we do. Okay? The informal definition. Because again, it's easier to explain. Okay? And the extended, where we give analogy, metaphors, comparisons and contrasts, descriptions, analysis. Yan. May mga iba't iba tayong ways of defining a certain concept. Now, in the formal definition, ayan, where the term belongs. So, a plant. Okay? So, for example, if we are to define the word tree. Okay? So, a tree is a plant. Correct. Diba? Because that is the class where that term belongs to. The differentia are the characteristics of that plant. So, as a tall, thick wooden stem and has many large branches. So, a plant that so, kapag pinagsama natin si genus at sa diferensya, ang mangyayari ay a plant that is tall, has thick wooden stem, and has many large branches. It's like that. Okay? Now, with the formal definition, medyo mahirap lang siya because not all words have genus, not all words have not all words are as easy to define as a plant, 'di ba? Try to define, parang ang hirap naman i-define ng love, 'di ba? As a concept. So, it's not always going to be a formal definition. So, sometimes we use the informal, 'di ba? The informal definition, people can be described as, a man is described as what? Someone who is larger and more robust bones and joints and surfaces. So, that's informal definition. Another informal definition we can have is the tocopherol or by tocopher kung ano man yan, tocopherol or vitamin E is naturally found in vegetables. So there's a description. Tandaan, so informal definition, it is more on describing that term or describing that concept. Sa extended definition naman, ito, ayan. So democracy is a form of government in which all eligible citizens participate in equally, either directly or through elected representatives in the proposal, development, and creation of laws. Sa extended definition, we can have it encompasses social, economic, and cultural conditions that enable the free and equal practice of political self-determination. Democracy also contrasts with forms of the government where power is either held by one person, as in a monarchy, or where power is held by a small number of individuals, as in an oligarchy. So, as we can see here, there is a definition or the main definition, and then it is expounded upon or it is given more clarification with the extended definitions. Okay? It is recommended that we use extended definitions from time to time, especially if there are certain concepts or ideas that are a little bit more complicated to understand. Okay? So, yun po. Yan ang example ng extended definition. So those are the three parts or the three ways of defining under, of course, the three ways of elucidating. Guys, iba po yung three types of definition sa three types of elucidation, ha? Those are two different. Yung elucidation, that's the definition, explication, and clarification. Under ng definition, we have formal definition, informal definition, and extended definition. Please don't be confused about that. Okay. So we have now the patterns of development. Patterns of development are additional strategies to create a detailed and effective concept paper. Some of you may already know this. Baka dun sa mga nakikinig sa reading and writing dyan. I believe this is something that the reading and writing lessons have tackled. Kung tama yung naaalala ko sa pagtuturo ko ng reading and writing. So we have these. Ayan. So, patterns of development, again, these are just ways to further effectively explain your concept. So, first is defining. We already talked about that. Giving definitions and explanations to certain terms. Next is describing. Giving descriptions in terms of quality and in terms of paano ko ba i-explain to? Basta i-describe nyo siya in a way that is more understandable than the current current situation. Okay? So, basta i-describe nyo. So, for example, magbibigay ko ng mga descriptive words. So, pwedeng yung gumagamit kayo ng mga adjectives dito. Yon, nakalimutan ko lang yung term, pero gagamit kayo ng mga certain adjectives. Appropriate adjectives, ha? Huwag yung masyadong opinionated adjectives. Next is comparing. You can further develop the understanding of a topic by comparing and contrasting certain topics to one another. That way, by comparing, yeah, comparing and contrasting. So making an analogy is simply making kumbaga kinukumpara nyo yung situation sa iba pang situation. So for example, if yung laging sinasabi ng so parang yung lagi sinasabi ng parents natin na so pag tumalon si ganito sa tulay tatalon ka rin. That's analogy. Sabi ko, grabe naman. Ang lagi ko sagot, grabe naman. Kinopya ko lang yung exam niya na ano na tumalon na siya sa tulay. Sinamahan ko na siya sa pagtalon sa tulay. So that's an analogy, okay? Next is classifying. So when we say classifying, we classify certain concepts into bigger or broader ideas. Okay? So this can be done through simply looking at the bigger picture of the concept. Next is illustrating. Illustrating is we have hindi po ito pagdodrawing It's essentially a deeper way of describing. Okay? It's a deeper way of describing and letting certain concepts be known to our readers. Okay? Next is narrating. You can narrate sa narrating you're essentially telling a story or a timeline of certain events or certain accounts that are related to your concept. And we have explaining. Of course, we'll give certain explanations, expounding upon the concept itself, analyzing cause and effect. This is quite complicated kasi syempre kailangan alam niya muna yung cause, alam niyo yung effect, you'll figure out how to analyze said cause and effect and how to how to align that cause and effect. Syempre, ayaw naman nating magkaroon ng slippery slope or any other logical fallacies sa sa paper natin. And last is listing. This is quite literally, it's just listing down certain examples to further give evidence to what your concept is about. Okay? So, magli-list down kayo ng iba't ibang examples and evidence dyan. Okay? So, those are the different patterns of development. Do you have any questions about concept paper, mga anak? Before I go on to your surprise. May pa-surprise ako sa inyo kasi last lesson na natin. Wala. Parang wala na. Okay. So, sabi ni Faith wala daw. Since wala na po tayong questions, bago po ang lahat, meron po tayong quiz. Okay, the quiz has already been assigned to you, of course. Ayan. Bakit ko ba yun? Slide share. Ayan. So, the quiz is already scheduled and will be assigned to you at 4 p.m. Tomorrow is a holiday, so I'm not assigning the deadline for tomorrow. So, you have until Wednesday to answer the quiz. Reminder lang po, since we are headed towards the end of the semester, those who still have lacking activities and quizzes, you may please comply and answer those. Now, here comes the surprise, mga anak. Wala po tayong activity. I'm not going to assign an activity for this lesson. All you have to do is answer a simple question. Okay? So, let me reveal our question. Because I want you to focus on the survey report. Yan. So, the survey report, since our exams are next week and the week after, and then next week and the week after, the deadline of our survey report will be on the 21st of February. Okay? So you have 3 more weeks to comply with that. So, of course, since you have 3 weeks, I expect there to be certain quality to your research, to your survey reports. Okay? Now, with this, ayan, this is just, you just have to answer this. You're not going to write a concept paper. I just want to get an idea of what you think is a worthy thing or a worthy project to propose. So, eto po, think of a problem in your community. What project would you like to propose to solve it, and why does it need to be approved? So, answer this question in 5 sentences or more to earn a get Ma'am, do we get deductions for passing a task late? I used to deduct, but now, it's more of puso na lang. Hindi na ako masyadong nagde-deduct ngayon. Dati ano for every day, minus 0.5. So, kung 10 days kang late, minus 5 points na yun. Pero ngayon, wala nang deductions. Just please pass your activities. So, ito po yung question natin. Again, no problem, Faith. So, think of a problem in your community, and what project would you like to propose to solve it, and why does it need to be approved? Answer this question in 5 sentences or less. You have until Friday of February 11 to do so. Okay, mga anak, so make sure that you answer this. Explain yourself well, okay? Gamitin niyo yung mga pinag-aralan nating methods of elucidating para maintindihan kong mabuti kung bakit, kung ano talaga yung problem, and of course, kung paano niyo gustong isolve. Okay, I'll assign that already, so you have access. Bibigay ko na rin sa inyo yung slides para wait, so that um, you can study for the exam. For the quiz. Now, our exam summative, while I'm here, our summative exam will be 30 items. Okay, 30 points, 30 items, and excuse me, our final exams are 100 points, 80 items. Okay. So, there we go. Please study for our quiz, our exams, answer the question, work on your activities, whether it is our current activity of the survey report or the past activities that you have not worked on yet. I will be available for consultation during your exam days. So if you want to consult on a few things, for example, kung yung grupo nyo medyo nahihirapan sa concept or sa survey report, we can set up a meeting so that we can all talk about it together. But make sure to email or message me first so that I can confirm a time slot for you. Minsan kasi, especially during exam weeks, we have meetings and seminars that we have to attend to. And of course, I'd like to make proper time for all of you. Okay? So, yun lang po. With that, thank you for an incredible semester. That's all for today. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you when I see you. Goodbye, class.